friends, I thought it would be fun not only to cover new brushes from Fude Bobo. Thank you, Bobo, for sending these in PR. I cannot wait to get into them. While diving deeper into these brush treasures, I thought it would be fun to feature older luxury beauty favorites. As seen from your response sharing an old Tom Ford face eye palette, Moonlit Violet, in a recent short I uploaded, a lot of people were like, where'd you get that face palette? And I'm like, I'm sorry. It's discontinued. And to demonstrate these brushes, I thought it'll be fun to dive into older luxe beauty favorites, demonstrating the textures that I think will pair well with some of these brushes and whatnot. And my apologies in advance. Yes, some of these products are no longer available, but I thought it'd be fun diving into my older collection, and perhaps it will inspire you to do the same. And again, a huge thank you to Bobo for sending these brushes in PR. And if you are interested in taking a look, my links are affiliated. So I thank you in advance. Even if you just browse around and not buy anything, I appreciate the consideration. So let's get right into it. The first one up, we have the Bobo and Chikuhodo Baby Owl Trapezoid Multi-Purpose Brush. You can see the baby owl here with the maquillage style, almost like, I want to say, is a flower balloon. I think it is absolutely adorable. And this is a part of her maquillage owl collection, which you can also find on her site. This was the first release, and my apologies for my poor powder brush looking a little cinched because I had her in a brush guard. But if you want to check out this brush in its full fluff mode, I have a video showcasing the powder brush in its full fluff glory, and you can check out the timestamps just to see that portion of the video. We have the foundation brush, both in Silver Fox and Chikuhodo goat hair, and now with the baby owl brush, same Silver Fox and high gray Chikuhodo hair mix. What a fantastic shape. And we have seen this shape before, right? The slope shape. And I think what makes this brush particularly unique in my eyes is that I have plenty of slope brushes in the synthetic category, especially when it comes to complexion. What comes to mind is the classic BK Beauty 101 contour brush. And I think recently they added, it was either the 109 or 102 in that slanted design. Also my Refer brush, their LC collection they released, I think last year. I can't recall, my gosh. The days are just going by quickly. And when we get to the Yoshiki brush, this is also slanted, as you can see. But to have a powder brush with this Silver Fox and Chikuhodo goat hair mix at this density and size, I immediately thought of harder to pick up textures, which we'll get to in a minute when we come to the demo. And the size, I think, and what Bobo's intentions were in designing a brush like this was to be multi-purpose, as in the title. Not only can you use this for foundation, although she hasn't personally used this brush for foundation, I can only imagine how successful that will be if you were to go in with a powder foundation, because it is incredibly soft and plush to the touch. Even though there's some density there, it still flows across the skin beautifully, and it doesn't feel too tight on the maneuvering, which I appreciate, especially if you wanted to pounce in bronzer or even blush, those harder to pick up textures that don't necessarily need you to slide, or how would I describe this, strike in this way, but just the pouncing itself will diffuse the product well and will leave behind a soft finish on the skin. And it's funny, the larger foundation brush I could also use to apply a powder foundation product. This is going to get it on a lot faster simply because it's larger in size, but the versatility here cannot be disputed, because not only can you use this foundation for foundation if you wish, bronzer application, blush application, and yes, for highlighter. You might have to just strategically place the highlighter on the very tip of the brush, or maybe you like a higher dose of it and you purposefully want to cover the entire surface area of the brush and pounce on a larger region of your cheekbone. That is totally up to you. Next, we have the Koyudo Yoshiki Kakishibusome cheek highlight brush with high gray Chikuhodo hair. And if you don't know, Koyudo uses perhaps one of the highest grades of Chikuhodo goat hair. It's impeccable. You could just immediately detect it by the softness. And I wanted to quickly show this brush with Sonia's Traditions series brush. Up close, Sonia's brush is a little larger. They have that similar design where the bristles come to that fine tip, but you could see that the taper starts a little higher on Sonia's brush and a little lower on the Koyudo Yoshiki brush. Both are phenomenal. This is a little larger, but this being smaller, I think has great capacity to fit under the eyes well. Also highlight, exceptional for highlight as well as blush. And I just wanted to read a few notes here about the Kakishibusome dyeing technique. It says high-grade Chikuhodo processed using the traditional Japanese Kakishibu dyeing technique. Makes it more resistant to water and oil. In addition to being used for powders, it can also be used for cream, liquid, and balm textured products. The dense midsection of the bristles provides enough strength, allowing the tapered tip to apply products flexibly to the desired areas, suitable for blush, highlighter, and eye priming setting, among others, Bobo writes. What a fantastically versatile brush. Now, although this is appropriate to use with liquid and cream mediums, I might be a little more conservative in exposing this brush to those textures because I don't want to wash it as often. But I can imagine it'll be fine if I make sure to wipe off excess product off the bristles. I think that will help the longevity of the brush so I don't have to wash it as often. This one right here, oh my heavens. The Koyudo Yoshiki 3D Blush Cheek Brush Kakishibusome with high grade Chikuhodo goat hair. We've seen the slant before. Okay, let me get the Chikuhodo version, as well as Refer's limited edition release for holiday last year. Now, back to back, you can see they have a similar shape, and it's funny. This crimp that makes the Yoshiki brush quite unique in that it flattens out the base of the brush, but you can still see that slope, has really great splay, but has nice precision as well. Whereas the Chikuhodo brush doesn't have that same crimp behind the ferrule. It has an oval ferrule, a similar slant, but this feels a lot stiffer. Not necessarily rough on the skin, but you can see there's a lot more flexibility here from the Koyudo brush, not as much flexibility from the Chikuhodo brush, which might be an advantage if paired with a harder to pick up texture or a powder that you just need a little more movement on the skin with. Now, there is a similar dent here on the Refer brush, but not in the same manner that's done on the Yoshiki brush. Is interesting. It's like a more shallow crimp compared to the Refer brush, and this is made with gray squirrel and Chikuhodo goat hair, and this is a lot more flexible, so this will leave behind more of a floaty application of color, especially if you're using a softer powder that can move easily across the skin versus one that's tighter in the pan and that you need a little more maneuvering for that task. And also, I think fantastic for overall buffing, but this is why I love the Yoshiki brush, the 3D brush, because it has the ability to apply bronzer well through the cheekbones. Great pickup because it is Chikuhodo goat hair. And as we read with the highlight brush, because this was processed with the same Kakishibu dyeing technique, you could use this with creams or liquids. I wouldn't know, well, that's not true. I could imagine myself using this with the Hourglass liquid blush product, even Danessa's blurring balm flush product, Vital Surgeons, right? In those instances, I would recommend, however, that you work the product on the back of your hand first so as to not oversaturate the bristles, right? Because Chikuhodo goat hair is resilient, especially if it's dyed, but I think one should still be careful with their approach and how they expose these bristles and use them with those cream liquid products. Ooh, and now we're going into the Nebulae collection, the Bobo and Chikuhodo collab category that you saw briefly with the cheek brush, and I had showed the previously released brushes before in earlier videos. Again, happy to link that playlist down below. We have 3 new weasel and goat hair mixed brushes, I believe. Let me make sure I have that correctly. Pulling up the notes here. Oh boy, so far away. First up is the S01. Bobo wrote S00. I think she meant S01. Writes here an improved version of the previously released Weasel blend with Chikuhodo goat hair eyeshadow brush. We have enhanced the layers of bristles, allowing the brush head to smoothly converge, facilitating color application while also addressing the deepening of colors in the eyelid crease and subtle blending in small areas. Now, if you're not familiar with weasel hair, weasel is a resilient bristle type. It's flexible, is soft at the tip, great for creams and liquids, and I think especially helpful or advantageous to use with an eye brush, especially if you like to use the eye cream pot formulas and whatnot, and to have a blender type design to work that type of product through your crease. Now, you can see this brush is a little tighter in design. It's not going to have the same splay as a softer goat hair brush or even a gray squirrel blender type of a brush, where you want more of that blown out color effect through the crease. Maybe you want it to extend beyond your crease point. This is going to keep it tighter in the crease and also have a deepening color effect, simply because it's going to pick up much more color, especially if the eyeshadow you're using this with is a softer powder texture. I would even argue that these harder to pick up eyeshadow formulas that we've seen with bronzers and blushes, the gelée types of products that could also exist in the eyeshadow color category, definitely picking up those baked formulas and just getting more color delivery using this weasel and Chikuhodo goat hair mix. And despite the weasel hair and Chikuhodo goat, it's still soft. Now, I wouldn't go in this manner, and I would use light pressure, but if you are sensitive to prickliness, there is just a tiny bit present here. I mean, the tiniest amount, but wanted to put it out there because if you don't want to feel any prickliness at all, I would consider looking into Kolinsky. Now, unfortunately, this brush specifically is sold out, but I'm sure maybe there'll be a restock. We can ask Bobo and perhaps she can answer in her direct messages. You can see they're similarly shaped in design, but Kolinsky is even silkier than weasel. And this brush from Eyeshadow is just exceptional. It's a Bobo and Eyeshadow collab. Again, grateful that she sent me this as well a few months ago, but wanted to compare those two in case you were wondering. And next we have the S04 T Squirrel Weasel mix, and Bobo writes that we chose a triangular shape and think this triangle much better than the skinny triangle. So you see there's a little more girth to the body. This rounded edged triangle is an innovative shape that offers high performance. The tips are more densely balanced, providing more power for blending and packing on any shadow formula on the lids. Great builder brush, and I think quite unique because builder brushes are usually rectangle, squarish in design, and to have a thick brush like this in a triangular shape with that taper and what I use to blend the heck out of my Chanel Kohl pencil from their spring collection. I've been using the heck out of Taupe Feuille because it is one of the most exceptionally colored mauves in pencil form that I've ever used in my entire life, and I've just been combining that pencil with all of my mauve, violet, lilac shadows in my collection. And this brush in particular is fantastic for moving that color around on the eyes, leaving behind that blurred effect. Also, if you like liner but diffuse, you can run this brush across the lid. Now, because it is tightly packed, it's going to feel stiff on the lid. It's not going to have that much bend and flexibility. It does at the tip, but on the base of the brush is actually quite stiff and strong to the touch, which I think makes it ideal to play shadow here on the outer corner if you wanted a heavier serving of color, and also to take color here gently under the lash line. But if you wanted to do that, I would use instead the S05, the pencil top for shadow liner, a standard pencil brush made with a mix of T Squirrel and weasel hair. It is firm yet soft to the skin, suitable for powders, liquids, and cream products. It can be used also as a smudge brush. And if you want to see these brushes in action in a quick way, I have featured these brushes in my When the Brush Can Do It All. I forgot how I titled it, but you could check out that short. Exceptional for inner corner highlight, running shadow through the lower lash line, and as Bobo wrote, getting that smudge on, which I do love to use a dedicated smudger brush for. This is also from the Nebulae collection, but I believe this is weasel and Chikuhodo goat hair. The flat edge makes it more precise to diffuse liner across the lid, but with this pointed pencil brush, especially with this flexibility makes it supremely easy just to get a little more maneuvering on the lash line while still being precise at the same time. And you could also whip color in a larger fashion on the outer lid and maybe take it more precisely through the crease if you wanted to take that route with the eyeshadow effect. Now that we've run through the details for each brush, we know the bristle type, we know now what products to experiment with, it's time for you to come in a little closer. That's enough. As you see, we were bare skin for the entire intro, and I just wanted to experiment with my other Bobo brushes. This is the Yoshiki high grade Chikuhodo goat hair foundation brush, a soft, I'm talking soft, flat top brush. So let's decide what foundation we want to throw on. I also have Shiseido on standby. Do you guys remember Shiseido? I remember they were at Sephora, in Sephora at one point, but I guess they just weren't selling as well. And I think Shiseido probably is found now at Macy's, Bloomingdale's. Shiseido's not at Nordstrom. I didn't see. I wish they were, however. Japanese-made makeup brand from the luxe category. This is their Synchro Skin Self-Refreshing Custom Finish Powder Foundation in 340 Oak. So I can try this, however, with the baby owl brush. Why not? I have a moisturizer on the skin. Oh, hold on. We gotta put the house clip on. Let's tap in. Not too bad. Now, I typically don't wear a lot of powder foundation, but I do recognize its advantages, right? Especially if you are on the normal to oily part of the skin condition spectrum, right, where you need a powder foundation to help combat excess oil so you don't look greasy at the end of the day. You can see though it doesn't provide as much coverage as my liquid foundation counterparts. However, I don't think it's a bad idea to apply powder foundation first and then maybe liquid foundation afterwards, maybe to combat that oiliness. Like if there's a more, for instance, let me grab it. If you like, skincare forward types of formulas like the Givenchy Glow Serum Foundation, but your oily skin will just not have any of it, maybe apply a powder, either a pressed powder or powder foundation first, and then go in with the Glowy Owy foundation after. This is in 4.5N, one of my best skin matches ever. What I'll do first is warm it up on the back of my hand and tap the excess on my face and lightly tap with my Yoshiki brush, and then we'll whip it on top, and that is much better. If you choose to use a natural hair foundation brush, please do not squeeze foundation directly on the bristles. Please do not do that. That's far too much makeup for the bristles to handle at once. It's better if you just pick up a little at a time, whether it be from the back of your hand, as I'm doing here, or from a palette. That way you also have better control over the application and the coverage you wish to achieve. And the high-grade Chikuhodo goat hair bristles are so incredibly soft. It's almost like plushy on the skin. And I don't think that's a bad application. The reason I like this density is that you could truly buff the foundation in and around your skin in a way that will leave behind a far smoother finish, in my opinion, compared to you just pouncing on in this manner. But if you are a user of mineral foundation, for instance, and that coverage is more than enough for you, the baby owl brush will be goated for that product. I'm just taking a little bit here to get some on the nose. I've been combining my Gucci and Burberry concealers. The Gucci 38N is a little more golden than the Burberry, and the Burberry texture, although more neutral, is a little more creamy. And I think the Gucci has more of a soft matte self-setting texture to it. The Gucci, not as self-setting, but definitely natural soft matte. Does that make any sense? Grabbing my Bobo and Eyeshadow Kolinsky brush to get this blend going under the eyes. I like to tap. I like to gently strike, not to pull the skin, but just to spread the product evenly under the eyes. Fantastic brush. Also, I have a video again breaking down this Eyeshadow brush, and I think crucial if you don't like to apply a ton of concealer under the eyes, and great if you want to run that concealer across the lids. And if you want to pinpoint any blemishes or areas of the face that need more coverage, you could use this brush for that task as well. Now, regular powder, of course, I have to go in with my highlight brush. And what did I use for, come to think of it, I didn't bring a pressed powder with me to Bae's house. No other than Prada's Rebalancing Setting Powder, which technically don't need to use under the eyes because I think the Gucci will take care of the set. But if you just want even more blurring under the eyes, then there you go. Moving in now with my Suku brow pencil. All right, here is what I was waiting for, because I have a ton of different bronzer textures on deck to help demonstrate not only the Yoshiki brush, but also our Chikuhodo collab brush, right? And especially when it comes to this guy, I immediately this old Tom Ford Ultimate Bronzer in 03 Bronze Age. Okay, you can see this is a baked formula, right? Where if you had a hard time picking up this product with a softer brush, for instance, if you try to pick this up with the Refer brush, it will be very a light serving of color, right? But if you really wanted to take advantage and get as much color as you want on the face, then you would use a denser brush. I would also argue equally successful, maybe not as much pickup as you would get from the Baby Owl brush, medium type of a pickup from that bronzer. And let's see here, I have an older bronzer from Marc Jacobs. I don't think, well, Dior recently released, which I have, a jumbo bronzer, but to not this extent, right? Are we done with the big old bronzers? 102 Tantric, the Mega Bronze. This is a softer powder, okay? This will be a lot easier to pick up than the Tom Ford one, and in that case, happily, we'll use the Refer brush with this type of powder. This actually will be good with the Tom Ford bronzer because this is stiffer than the Refer and a little stiffer than the Yoshiki brush, but great with the highlight cheek brush. Get it right there into the hollows. So let's try, okay? I'm striking it across. You see how much pickup that is? And I'm just pouncing through the hollows, bringing it up and all the way around because this is a bronzer. And in this way, the pouncing itself, because again, the bristles are so incredibly soft that just coming in contact with the skin diffuses the product effortlessly. I'm putting on some Prada balm on. I'll make sure it's in the affiliate links if you want to know which one it is. If you want to build up more color here through the hollows, you could just pick up more. But you saw just pouncing in the gelée powder just diffused the bronzer right then and there. And we could test now with the Yoshiki brush. I am striking a little bit more because I want to ensure that I have ample pickup with this product, but you saw how much more was on the Baby Owl brush. However, if you want just a little less than that, the Yoshiki brush is fantastic. Even with these harder to pick up gelée textures, you can see how it was able to successfully place that along the hollows of the cheeks. And because the bristles are longer, you can go in with more of a swirl and twirl effect versus the pounce and strike, right? You could go in swirl and twirl with the baby owl brush. There's not as much fluidity, however, with that technique as you would feel with the Yoshiki brush, right? And just to quickly demonstrate, highlight brush can now pinpoint a little more color through the crease wrong part of your face, Alicia. Do the hollows instead, but I primarily reserve this brush for under the eyes, highlight. You could even take it down the bridge of your nose using the very tip of the brush. And another product I wanted to also showcase with these treasures of a brush is this Chanel palette, the eyeshadow and blush palette in 957. I remember when I reviewed this palette, I wasn't well versed in Chanel brushes. I thought the formula was okay, but people were saying, those who are more well versed in luxury beauty than I am, wasn't the best Chanel blush formula because you see that these are baked and could be harder to pick up. So I thought, now you got this brush, and wanted to see, for instance, we can pick up just the peach, right? And I'm tapping in the pan here and then taking it over my cheeks. So that's a light starting of color, right? You can see that peach effect on the skin. It's not going to be as in your face as, like, let's say YSL's Peachy Nude. But if I were to take this more berry color, I would probably start it like mid cheek and then take it a little lower here across the face. Now that's going to be a larger serving of color. If I wanted to buff out that application, I could go in with my Yoshiki 3D blush and just take that application more across the cheek, right? So it won't appear as heavy on the center of the face. And why not using our highlight brush to pick up this like pinky pink gold type of a gig for a highlight? Great pickup for these tougher hardened pan textures, right? With this dyed Psycho bristle. I think it's great. It's pretty. So that's what I primarily thought of in terms of what types of makeup to demonstrate these brushes with. You know, those textures which are just sometimes a pain to deal with, and you want to use your makeup but you're not able to because you have these challenges, these roadblocks, if you will. But not to say you have to get any of this makeup or you have to use gelée baked textures with these brushes. I just wanted to offer as many options and ideas as possible and maybe spur some inspiration if you did have that problem child makeup product. But now perhaps Bobo's brushes bridge the gap for you in a sense. Off to the eyeshadow. So when I uploaded my Burberry video, many of you had shared your older Burberry products before they completely changed their makeup brand. And I'm kicking myself because this eyeshadow palette came after, after like that plum bronzy palette. I should have bought it. It was a limited release. But this is the Eye Palette Monogram collection, the 9-shade eyeshadow palette in this khaki bronzy color story. Now I wanted to use that palette with the new Chikuhodo brushes, but I also wanted to demonstrate how goated S04 is blending out like a pencil. This is the Pradaliner pencil in 04 Ember. The last time I checked, this guy was sold out on Sephora. Sephora's running a sale right now. Might not be sold out on PradaBeauty.com or Nordstrom, but they're not running a sale over there. But I just want to share. This is where I like to start off the look with in blending out an eye pencil. And I'm not going in as neat as I would if I were to draw like a more dedicated wing liner. I want this to be the base for the khaki eyeshadows in the Burberry palette. But I am kind of winging it just because by default, that's just where my hand goes. Now with the S04, I'm gently running over the pencil to get more of like that diffused effect across the lash line. And I probably have to apply more just so I can achieve a higher level of coverage. And using the tip of the brush helps to create more of that blended out effect. So this is what we're getting with the S04 and why I like it for this task specifically. Because if I were to go in with the smaller flathead brush, this one here, it wouldn't have the same effect. It'll have more a precise finish across the lash line. If I wanted a cleaner edge on my wing, but I don't. I want this to be a little more hazed out. And let's now try to replicate the same effort. This is always a problem where I'm trying to match the angle of what I did for eye number 1. I always feel I have to go thicker than what I think and higher. Thicker and higher. Same swooshing with S04. S04 is great because it's stiff and some density, but not so dense where you can't work these liner products the way you like if you wanted to. See what I'm saying? That actually came out a lot better than side number 1. Let me try to clean up side number 1. I think we can. I think we can salvage this by... Let me see if I could connect that dip and run S04 over that curve. Even if it's not as neat, I just wanted to establish this base first. But isn't Ember the most beautiful? And now with the same S04 in this like olive khaki shade, I'm tapping on the lid. Great for superior color payoff if you want to get a lot of color intensity on the lid, right? And I know I should have demonstrated with a softer shadow. Let's see here. I could go in with, I have this face palette from Tom Ford in Moss Agate Intensity 3, and you can see this is the wet dry formula. So I'll be happy. I'll be happy to show what we can use the S04. I'll pick up this more like teal forest green and place it. You see what I'm saying? The wet dry formula though from Tom Ford is exceptional. So even though it's baked, it's still soft on the pickup. I found it's not going to be so dry and hard pressed that you're not going to get any color payoff from there. We're switching now to the S01 because this is where I would use a blender to soften the edges, and I'll do that on both sides, even though we have different greens going on. I really love this Burberry palette. I think it is so pretty. And we're continuing with the Burberry palette actually, because I wanted to demonstrate how S01 can float color through the crease, maybe not in the most diffused fashion, but you can maneuver the brush in a way that will help carry the color beyond your crease line if you like that effect. So going in with this caramel shade, and I'm starting on the edge because you see how much color we got there? This brush will pick up a lot more from a softer shadow. So just beware, try not to pick up as much and lightly float the brush on the edges here so you could get a really nice blend there. So that's, you know, kind of what we have going on from the khaki eye. And now with our S05, I'm just concentrating more color on the outer lid to coincide with our pencils. So I'm, you know, filling in the space, if you will. And now with the gold shade onto inner corner. Great pickup with this brush. But these powders are softer. They're a true metallic formula. Well, yes, I would say. What do we just pick up? It is labeled here behind the compact as mist. I don't know what that means in Burberry land, but they also have metallic, they have satin, they have matte. If you were wondering what we applied first, this is considered to be a satin, the khaki color. And this gold color, the champagne, is considered to be a mist. I don't know what that means. I'll take the satin, run it through the outer third, and take our caramel matte, and all the way across we go. Yeah, I'll take a little bit of the champagne and run it on the lower inner part of the eye. Yes, and I'll continue using this palette on our Tom Ford eye. I just wanted to quickly demonstrate what or how S04 will perform with a baked like shade. Yes, with the Pat McGrath shades before they totally reformulate. So I'm thinking, you know what? Hold on, stand by. Don't go anywhere. I'm hopping into Bronze Seduction Mothership 5 because Guilty Pleasure is like a problem shade. Is one of the drier shadows that kind of changes over time. But the S04 will pick up just fine. And I'm actually placing that over the Tom Ford. Now, unfortunately, because of the drier texture, you're gonna have a little bit of fallout. You know what? I think I want to start from scratch, actually. I'm going to start from scratch. Let me kind of float that off. And I'll take a tissue and just gently wipe here. But you see how that Ember liner ain't going nowhere. That is, I think, one of the exceptional characteristics of the new Prada liners. They are waterproof. They are waterproof. Once you get to blending and shaping it however you want to look, it ain't moving. And perhaps, let's see, I'll use a little bit of concealer here to blank out our lid, you know, yours and my lid, because I want to try S04 again with Guilty, because I think that would be a nice example of using S04 with a tough shadow like Guilty Pleasure. And that liner didn't budge. I am cleaning it up a bit because I think the edge was already messy. However, I think it'll be better to use the Intensify wand just to ensure we don't get a lot of fallout, right? Because Guilty Pleasure, as much as I love the S04, Guilty Pleasure can be a little tough. All right, here we go. Round 2 and tapping. Let me get my mirror here. There we go. That's better. Better. I get how this shadow can be a little bit of a pain, but the stiffness from S04 helps maneuver the pigments around in a way that a softer brush I don't think will be successful in doing. All right, we got a little stormy gray eye going on with Guilty Pleasure. Hopping back into our Burberry palette, I thought we could smoke this out even more using S01, Where Did It Go? Hopping into the darker brown shade, and oh my goodness, again, like I had described on the first eye, is probably safer for you to plop that color down outside first, just so you have somewhere to go with the blend. Because again, this Weasel, let me double check. Yes, Weasel and Chikuhodo goat hair blend, strong pickup. Okay, so just make sure you're light-handed with that tap. Back in with our S05, and I picked up what is labeled as a metallic, this more taupe silvery shade, which I think appropriate to pair with Guilty Pleasure, and running that shadow across the lower lash line as well. And I'll take the darker brown matte. You know, this kind of looks like Pat's black coffee. It is dark and it has like that black brown shading to it. So pretty. And why not? Let's take a little bit of this metallic, but I'm running it through the inner part of my eye because I felt that was missing something. I just wanted to define that space a little more, right? And also wanted to clean up the lower inner part of my under eye just because we got a little bit of fallout from Guilty Pleasure, and I'm actually pouncing along the edges of my shading there. Okay. Woo, we really smoked it out with that eye. My goodness. And Ember is just embering. We love it. The lip, I think we gotta go taupe. We gotta go taupe with the lip family. Isame's lip liner in Liberica and Gucci's Glowing Care lipstick in Peggy Taupe. All right, lips are on. Let's spritz on a little setting spray because I got a lot of makeup on the face. Slap on these lashes and I'll be right back. And here are close-ups from our final look demonstrating Bobo's latest brush release. And I hope this video helped, especially if you had your eye on any of these tools, were wondering how they performed and with what types of makeup. And of course, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I thought it would be fun to feature older luxury beauty favorites that I haven't dove into in quite some time. Definitely a resurgence of interest ever since I used my older Tom Ford face and eye palette, and I'll be happy to film with those again, but because they're not available anymore, I didn't want to create too much FOMO, you know what I mean? If I had to pick a favorite, which is tough because I love them all, it will probably have to be the Koyudo Yoshiki 3D blush brush. Because of this slant and the Kakishibu dyed bristles, versatility is unmatched. I just found myself reaching for this brush numerous times over the weekend, especially with my Givenchy loose blush. Oh my goodness, a perfect brush to use with a loose powder formula because the way it just envelops your entire cheek and diffuses the product on contact is just unmatched. But you know, this little baby owl brush, which I have to say, although I didn't feature the Hourglass palette in this demonstration, but I did in my my short video that I posted, fantastic for these air baked powders that you need a little help with, especially if you have the lighter color compact as I do. This picks up a lot of that type of powder and it just pounces it on the skin effortlessly. So if you had one of these powders that were a little light for you, but you needed that color intensity, and it's okay to just pounce on the powder and not have to swirl and twirl to get a smooth blend finish, the Hour brush is fantastic for that. So I just wanted to mention that because if you like Hourglass powders, but you have like maybe the single bronzers that unfortunately were not very expansive in their range for skin tones, but you're like medium as I am and you wanted to pick up a little more color, this brush right here, and all brushes I use in this demonstration are just fantastic. And I have to say, it's just wonderful to have an individual like Bobo who constantly pushes the boundaries on design and bristle mix types. And it's inspiring too because it helps me think outside of the box, not with brush making, but with whatever I'm doing, with ideas and what ifs, and let's experiment with that. I think her brush designs and bristle combinations are unique and a fun time when you actually get your hands on these brushes, because what starts to happen is it not only encourages to wear more of your makeup, but it just kind of pulls you in your routine in just an enamorous way where you love everything in your collection now. It also serves as an initiative to explore more of your collection that you haven't used, because again, the problem child product that you just didn't find the right brush for. And also, for example, the S04, with this type of a brush and with my Chanel product, first of all, I've been using this pencil nonstop. I know we did the khaki eye, bronzy eye today, but who have I been embracing the moms, okay? Because of this color, and to have a brush like this, now I'm getting more into like those diffused chunky wings. I love that look. And although I did it with the Pradaliner today, having this type of brush at my disposal to create that effect along the lash line, ooh, it has been fantastic. And yes, it's gonna feel stiffer. It's not gonna feel as silky as Kolinsky or an exclusively made Chikuhodo, high-grade Chikuhodo goat hair eye brush in this design, but I think it's nice to have a Weasel Chikuhodo goat hair mix that you can use with creams and liquids for eye products just to create different effects on the lash line like I did today. I can't even imagine how beautiful it will be with like the Victoria Beckham liners that, listen, after this video, I'm going to film a shot with me video and figuring out what should I buy from Victoria Victorian Beckham beauty, because I have some questions and I thought it'll be fun to get your input, family, as to what products I should purchase or which ones should I avoid for now. But again, a huge thank you to Bobo for being so kind in thinking of me and sending these gifts, and my apologies for the delay in uploading this video, but hopefully it helped. And let me know what your personal favorite Bobo brushes are down below. Would love to know. And that means if you made it this far, make sure you like the video. Clicking that thumbs up helps my video tremendously. Also consider subscribing, because more videos are on the way and you will know immediately when you click that notification bell when that upload drops. You could check out my recent Bobo brush video here, as well as my latest Burberry video where I take a look at new products that I purchased from the brand recently. I'll see you in those videos, down in the comments for this video, and on here again next time.